Hello gamers, welcome to a Mixed Stardust. I don't know what this is. Blender rendering session slash 3D modeling tutorial, I suppose. I've never done something like this before, so this is going to be completely different than anything I've ever done. And I'm looking forward to this because graphics are kind of a hobby of mine. I like to mess around a lot with GIMP and doing Photoshop and photography and stuff. So yeah, what I'm doing today is I'm going to be working on a train, a RDC1, which is kind of a common passenger car. And the purpose of this is that I'm going to be putting it into Minecraft, and its sleek design and modern look is different than what the people with immersive engineering have already installed into their mod pack. So I'm hoping to be able to get this done today. Hopefully have a pretty good model here, and you know, with some good luck here, and be able to add this into the mod pack, so that way I can have it for my server and everyone else out there playing Minecraft, for them to be able to enjoy. Now, we're not going to be using cycles render because we are going to be using the default Blender render, because we want our models to be low poly, and there's a big difference between the way that Blender render works and the cycles render works. Okay, so if you're really interested in the differences between that, I would highly recommend that you check out Andrew Price's channel. He is known on Facebook as the Blender Guru, and he makes some really top quality models. Actually, I watched so many of his videos over the years that I kind of almost feel like I know the guy, even though I've never met him or even had more than one or two words in exchange over a forum. So anyway, without any further delay, I'm going to now get down into the main bit here of beginning our model. So I'm going to assume that anybody watching is completely unfamiliar with a 3D modeling environment. So what we're dealing with here, I just have two screens up. I'm getting ready to set up multiple camera perspectives. It'll make doing the model much easier, and you'll see what I'm talking about in a moment. So I'm just going to close this screen out, and I'll just show you the basics here. Okay, so this is what they call the default Blender cube. Okay, I just pressed the 0 on my number pad to snap to where my camera perspective is. This camera is an object within the environment. You can hit the G button after you've selected the frame of the camera, and you'll be able to mouse that around nice and easily. And you can also then hit the R key to rotate it. Okay, you've got X, Y, and Z axis. So let's say we just want to rotate it on the Z axis. Okay, I hit R for rotate and then Z, and now you can see it will only pivot in those directions. Now if you want to have precise control over it, there are the tools here in which you can change the location and the rotation, as well as the scaling of any object that you currently have selected. Or you could press R and hit, like, say 45, and that'll rotate it apparently by default on the y-axis of 45 degrees. So there's multiple ways to do the same thing here in the Blender environment, which is really nice, because it saves a lot of time, and you don't have to worry about looking through the menus for everything, or sometimes you don't remember all the hotkeys and you have menus, and there's at least 2 ways to do almost anything. So as I was saying, I'm going to be setting up multiple camera angles so I can look at my model from different perspectives at the same time. But before I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this panel here. Okay, that's just a little click mark right there, the little plus on the side. And I'm going to come down to the bottom of the list, and I'm going to check background image. I'm going to add an image that I've already downloaded. And now I have to navigate. It's going to be under my desktop in my filing cabinet, and images, references, vehicles. So I've got two models or reference images that I'm going to be using. Now the thing is about reference images that you have to understand when you're working in the environment is you can see here as I'm holding the middle mouse wheel, I can use that to zoom as well as to rotate freely without having the camera selected. Okay, so it's like you have your scene camera, which would actually be doing any recording within the environment, and then you have your environment camera, which is kind of a ghost object that doesn't actually exist up here at all within your scene environment. Okay, so what we're going to do is hit the number 5 button on the keypad, and that snaps you into and out of what they call orthopedic, I think I'm pronouncing that right, mode. The difference is that it is completely flat. You can see that the grid appears and it snaps its orientation. So if we're looking with pressing the Z button now, we're looking at the wireframe of the mesh. The mesh is what you call an object within a 3D environment. Okay, so this, I guess you could think of it as a wire mesh, like if you were doing concrete construction or something like that. Okay, so pressing the Z button, I can snap into and out of wireframe mode. Now again, I'm going to just press the first button to snap to the front view. Now you can see that we're in front ortho right up here in the top corner. It might be a little bit difficult to see because of the background. So this is going to be my front camera. Now I have my cube selected. I'm going to press G to grab my cube and bring it over here. And as you can see, this is already like right on the money as far as scaling it and everything goes. We just have a little bit of work that we kind of need to do to get some of the shapes right. A couple of cuts that we're going to have to do or something like that. Now if I continue to, oh sorry, wrong button, that would GIMP commands. Apparently holding down the control button while you're in Blender will go sideways. Anyway, so you have up and down with the mouse wheel, hold control, use the mouse wheel, you go left and right. I don't know if there's a way to go up and down, I don't know. I just hold the shift button and I use the center mouse wheel. I could just slide around however I like. Okay, so we have our first camera set up. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take the same scene, and in this window you can see I can rotate this now without affecting the orientation of the model over here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press, because this, let me just, oh, one more thing that is really handy is to turn the opacity up on your background image. That way you have a nice clear bright image, but I kind of like to also have the grid to kind of use as a guideline. So I like right here at about 70%. It's pretty good for me for now for this model. Now I've divided my screen into, another nice thing about this is that you can completely close any of these panels. Alright, and then you can always get them back by clicking on its respective check button up there. Alright, so now I'm going to use the number 3, and that's going to rotate it in a different orientation. This is the angle, as you can see from up top, right ortho. And apparently we need to change the background opacity here as well. Okay. Whoops. Get back into position. I'm going to grab it again. Okay. I'm lying to you. I need to slide the image. And to do that, see, we have rotate here, size, okay, and then we can offset the position. So I'm going to slide this down, and that's just about where we're going to want it. Okay, so now this is the same object on 2 different camera views at the same time. Okay, now I'm going to do it one more time. I'm going to slide this window open. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of my timeline by, because we're not actually animating anything, so we don't really need this window down here. I'm going to slide this one up, okay, and I'm going to take this one out of the mode that it's in. That's another nice feature about Blender, is that all of these windows are all actually the same window, and they have a function that they behave in based on what item you have here selected on the pop-up window. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to put this one into 3D view as well. Alright, now I'm going to take this one, make sure that we're in orthoscopic view, and for some reason our background's not coming up here. What is the reason for that? Let me just think for a minute. It should be here. It's not. Okay, so I'm going to add the same image back in. Should remember the file. Your recent files are always going to be here on the side. As you can see, the files that I used to make my YouTube channel introduction are all here, my intro video. We want this one. Okay. Now we're rocking and rolling. Excuse me. I'm going to turn the opacity up, and I'm going to again just move it horizontally a little bit. That looks about right. And now we're going to bring it down vertically a little bit. It needs to come over a little bit more to be centered. So that looks just about right. Okay, now, see, we can zoom in and we can tell that although our height relatively matches over here, our front matches over here. But it seems like we're a little bit wider than what we need to be. So the first thing we're going to have to do is to edit the shape of the object. What we're going to do first is essentially just make this a regular kind of brick shape to be able to match up with the shape of the train, the general shape. Now let me actually take a look at this and make sure that the outer dimensions aren't any different than what it's showing. Right, this is the coach, and then these are the walls. So this is definitely the basic, the entire thing. It's not like it's missing side panels or anything like that. Okay, so we're going to press tab, and that's going to take us into edit mode. Okay, now here we can still press Z, but you can see that the cube has changed. Okay, it's no longer completely transparent like it is here. Okay, so that's how you can tell. One quick way of being able to tell what mode you're in without having to look is just by turning the object transparent. You'll be able to see that you can see some type of translucent element to the object. Alright, now I'm going to use the S button to scale it. And I know that the green arrow is the y-axis and the red arrow is the x-axis, with Z being the blue arrow, which would be the height. Now, I'm going to scale it on the Y roughly to about the right size that we need it to be. Okay, and now again, I'm going to scale the X, bring it out, or you know what, I'm sorry, I just Control Z, I'm going to undo that, and instead of scaling it, what I'm going to actually do is I'm using the C button now, and that creates this circle. It's kind of hard to see with the background. You get this little spotlight circle. It's a wide area selector. It's useful for if you wanted to completely deselect this with the middle mouse button. And now I just left click it again to select it. You can select just 2 points or vertices, right? You can select 3. So this is nice for selecting groups quickly, okay? And also, because we're in orthoscopic mode, we'll be able to select anything that's in the background as well, which you don't see because it's flat. If we change the perspective, you can see that now you see that this object actually has depth, whereas in this mode it's kind of flat, like you're just doing a 2D drawing. And this is really a helpful way to be able to get the proper dimensions when you're working with diagrams like this. Okay, so I'm going to press the C button, and I select the 2 vertices, the 4 vertices that I want, and now I'm just going to hit the G button to grab it, and now you can see I can freely move this however I like, but the problem is trying to get it lined up just right is a little bit of a pain in the neck. So I'm going to press the G button again and then hit the Y button, and now I can just move it on the y-axis. I'll be able to get it wherever I like, and you can zoom in really close. If you want to be so super meticulous, you can get this like right up to the pixel, and you can get really super detail. Okay, so now I'm going to press C again, and the middle mouse button, I'm deselecting there, I'm selecting the bottom. Okay, now I'm going to grab the Y and just line it up just like that. Now this first shape is essentially just going to be this outer plating here, or the shell, as you would, I guess. Paneling. The main body. I have another reference image actually. Let me just pop that up real fast. I've got so many files everywhere. Vehicles. Okay, so this is the one that we want to take a look at, as well as this one. Now, It was really nice that one of the guys working on the Immersive Railroad mod pack actually gave me some of his work, so I can just take a look at roughly how many objects I'm going to need to be able to create. Right, so I need wheels for everything. He's got an exhaust, a frame, a fuel tank, the shell, which is what we're working on right now, an alternator, and a bogie. I'm not sure what a bogie is on a train, so I'm going to Google that real fast just to make sure that we're not going into this blind. A bogie in the UK or railroad truck, a wheel truck, or simply a truck in North America. Okay, so that's the truck, which looks like it's basically an assembly. I'm just going to try to see if we can get, okay, yeah, so that's just like a truck on a skateboard or something like that. It's assembly hub basically that holds multiple wheel components on. It's got some shocks on it. Alright, so now we understand what that is. Here's another example of a truck. They could show a skateboard. Alright, all different examples of what a truck is. It's pretty basic stuff. Alright, so he's got a truck rear and a truck front, as well as the wheels that couple with it. A cab, an engine block, 2 exhausts, a frame, a fuel tank, and a shell. So we're going to want to make roughly those same exact amount of components, so that way when our model is put into the game, it'll be about the same. Now the reason why we want this picture up is because I'm going to be doing all of the texturing for the train, and I'm going to add that into on another video because I'm not sure how long this one's going to run. Assuming that everybody going on to this video is a complete 3D newbie when it comes to modeling. You know, I was there one time. I'm not the best model by far either. You know, I mean, I can model pretty well, but when it comes down to animation and particles and all of those types of things, I'm still learning. You know, and, yeah, I make stuff here and there every once in a while. Hardly do it every day. Just something I like to do. So, anyway, back to it. We're making our shell, which needs to encompass the entire length of the train, basically. Okay, now this diagram doesn't appear to be perfectly straight, whoever drew it. I mean, I'm not discrediting whatever engineer drafted this up. It's pretty good, just not like quite computer precise. Now you can see here I've scaled out the side, the width of the train. So that's not what we want to do, which means that we need to rotate the background that we have over here. So I'm just going to Control Z a few times, undo all of that. Alright, now we're back to our default size, which is nice and everything. And we need to rotate this 90 degrees. And we need to actually be working on it from this perspective. That's not too confusing. Whoops, we don't want that to be, oh, that was, I'm gonna get rid of that and just pop it back up. Okay, there we go. Now we're just going to rotate this 90 degrees, and we want to move to roughly about the center like I said before, once all of these different camera angles are lined up, it really saves a lot of time when you're working with your mesh. Now, I'm just kind of going slow here because I want everybody to be able to keep up if you don't know how to do any of this. This is how I learned, just from watching other people modeling on the internet. So I'm kind of hoping to just kind of pass the favor along and teach other people how to do something that maybe they would find to be really interesting. Okay. Oh, we want to make sure we deselect those. And I'm just going to grab the Y, slide that up. Oh, and another nice thing that they added into Blender is when you're scrolling something, if you go to the top of the screen, your cursor automatically goes to the bottom of the screen. So you can pretty much kind of infinitely scroll to be able to work with your model. Okay, now we've pretty much got our first dimension set, but it seems like we're a little bit off scale on this one. So what we really need to make sure that we do is get our measurements right. So if we're looking at the front of the train, this is just probably scaled up for the sake of the diagram, for ease of reading it. So what we're going to do is make sure that we have kind of a proper width. This says we need to find where they're measuring the width. That looks like 1 foot going. I don't see any measurements going that way. There's a cross section, but still, again, that's just the distance between those compartment areas. I'm really kind of disappointed that this doesn't have that measurement. So we're just gonna say that that's it, because we don't have any solid information to base this on. Now, the reason why I decided not to scale the object and instead to extrude the vertices, excuse me, sorry about that, is because, from what I understand, and I don't know because I've never actually put anything into a game before, but when you scale while you're in transform mode instead of in object mode, which is the default mode that we began in, it somehow changes the weight of the model and everything like that when you go to import it into a game. Maybe that was just specifically with a project I started with somebody else, and because of the Python involved with Blender, we were trying to use the Blender render and the Blender game engine to make something, but that's the reason why I'm doing it like this anyway. So now, to get the basic shape, we've got our nice brick, right? Nothing too fancy. So what we're gonna do is select these top vertices. Okay, we're gonna extrude those by pressing the E button. And what that's gonna do is just create another set of vertices for us to use. Now you can see we can easily double the cube that we're working with. We could do all sorts of different things, make all kinds of cool shapes out of it. Infinite possibilities. So I'm going to bring those back. Just Control Z again. Snapping back to the top with number 7 on the keypad. Now this one I'm going to scale because I'm not changing the shape and size of the object. I'm just working with a couple of vertices. So now I'm going to scale by pressing the S button and bringing that down to the point where these side the side panels essentially are kind of surrounded by the extra vertices that we've just made. Now I can see down here I've come a little bit of ways from where we are on this axis, so I'm going to just specifically scale that on the y-axis and bring it back to where it looks good. Now I'm going to go up and check the top, make sure that that's fine, just holding the middle mouse button and scrolling through. Okay, now because I don't want to keep zooming in and zooming out and pressing the C button to deselect everything, okay, so what I'm going to do is just right click at any one point in this area, and that'll select a single vertice or point on our mesh. Okay, and you can also see that we're still quite high up here, which we don't want that. It's because I'm taking my time trying to explain everything. I guess I forgot to move that back down. Alright, so like I was saying, select one point and now paint it with the C button to pick the area we're working on. And I'm just going to kind of pull this up a little bit further. That looks okay there, I suppose. I don't know. It doesn't need to be super detailed, right? I mean, it's Minecraft. And this is going to be really low poly anyway. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to do what's called a round cut. Well, let me think about that for a minute before I get into it, because this is going to be our shell. What else do we have looking at it? We just basically have that and then that. We need to make a couple of extrusions, and I think that a round cut is going to be the easiest way to make those little shapes. Let's go ahead and just take a look back at our real life example as well. Okay, so that's the front of the train, and that kind of just looks like I don't know, a doorway where they walk into from like the train station boarding area or something. I'm not, maybe that's just fortification, so if the train crashes, it's a little bit more reinforcement there to keep the shape of the door probably integral, so that it doesn't collapse and there's still a way out. I'm assuming. I'm not a train buff. I just need a subway train model. I like trains. From what I've learned of them so far, they're really neat, the way that the switches and everything like that operate in video games, at least. I don't know about in real life. Okay, so back to the round cut trick here. Now what we're going to do is just hit the control button. We're going to hold that down and we're going to press R. Now you can see that that created a purple line there right down the middle of our object, because we're cutting it all the way around the object. Now if I scroll my mouse wheel, you can see that it begins to multiply these, okay, and it will divide them into every time I move the mouse wheel up. So for this, we really only need two, and it seems like their default spot is pretty good. Now you can see what that's done is it automatically created 12 extra vertices, right? 6 for every edge on every side in the area that we've selected. Alright, now what we really need to do is just extrude this out. Whoops, sorry, I thought that the picture was up. Extrude this out a little bit. We've got a lamp up here. I'll just throw that on what I'm going to call the cockpit, or maybe make the roof its own object. Okay, and then we've got this little baggage area, I suppose. Okay. I really wish I could see the back of this. I imagine that there's a hitch, or a coupler, is what they call it on a train, a coupler. So now the question is, Doom mods. Okay. Trying to figure out which is the front and which is the rear. I don't know why I'm going to look at this sideways when I've got a diagram right here. B end, A end. Okay, so I'm assuming that B means back. Okay, so this is the rear end over here, right? Is there another door up there for? Yeah, there is. Alright. Looks like that's a coupler there. Well, it also looks like there's one there. I don't see why not, right? And this isn't even our caboose. This looks like it's just a passenger car. So we're still going to have to make the locomotive model as well. I don't think I really need to do another video on that one. I'm just kind of trying to show you guys something I do besides play Minecraft all the time, and maybe teach somebody some new skills. So I'm going to extrude and see which we've grabbed. Okay, that looks about right. I'm going to bring this down. So the bottom is level with what we've already done. Alright, I'm just going to hit G to grab and Z and just slide that up because we want it to be nice. That's not so accurate. There we go. The accuracy is really going to matter when we start doing our UV unwrapping. Okay. Back to the top. So now, back to the picture of the train. Wow. I usually have that up there. Alright. I don't know which end we're looking at. So I'm going to just make this thing here out of what we just selected. And I don't see a coupler on the front of this one. Maybe those are options that they have, or maybe that's it there. I really don't know. And I see that they have lights. These lights aren't included in the diagram. So I'm going to make those as part of this casing as well. So now we've got one that shows the front, and that is the end we're working on. Okay, so we're going to take a look over here. We're going to deselect these ones, and now I'm going to make a round cut here in the front, and that's going to slice it again. I can mouse wheel and multiply the amount of slices we have. But the more vertices we add, the slower it's going to render, and especially for something like Minecraft where everything is really polygonal or super low poly. You know, everything is a block. I think the Steve model's got 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Something like 30 vertices altogether. And that's pretty much... Whoa, we don't want to be doing that. I don't know how I did that. Alright. So, what we need... Take a look at this. we need this shape here. Okay, we're a little bit wider. Now, I'm not sure how I'm going to manage that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this entire thing for the moment, and I'm going to just press S temporarily to... no. Because if I change the dimensions on the X and the Y, or the X and the Z, and I don't do the Y, I might not ever get them back. I should be fine if I just line it up over there. Alright, so I'm going to just scale the X temporarily to match everything up with this. Now, these little extrusions here on the panels are going to be something else that we're going to cover as well. I'm going to scale Z, and we just kind of need to get the height about right. Okay, and that's that little baggage compartment, so we're going to need another round cut over here, and we only need to do 2 more. Now, okay, let me show you this. Okay, so when I round cut, I mouse wheel up once, and then I left click. And now I can slide these wherever I want them, say if I didn't exactly want them to be centered, but that's not the case here, so I'm just going to right click, and it's going to deselect those and automatically place them perfectly centered. So you don't have to worry too much about doing that. And I'm going to actually take a quick 5-minute break and have a cigarette. I'll be right back.